Hello and welcome back to the Birdcage. I'm Jack Kenna, joined alongside Jackson Tennant, JT. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing great, Jack. How are you?
Good, good, good. The Kansas Jayhawks with a huge Sunflower Showdown victory over the Kansas State Wildcats. Kansas State Wildcats, not particularly their best season so far.
hmm
It's Drum Tang and the crew's worst campaign, I want to say, of his tenure. That Kansas State basketball team is not necessarily off to the hottest start. Kansas, a much needed home win, 84-74 over K State. Right away, what are your initial thoughts of the 10-point victory?
Definitely a much needed win. I was at the Iowa State game in Ames, and it never that game never really felt in doubt for Kansas to lose that game. And I think having a rebound win like that, with the Sunflower Showdown and everything like that, that's huge for the Jayhawks. And I thought they played well overall. And besides like that one kind of little dry spell in the second half, obviously the quick start was really key for them. So yeah, I think overall I think they played very well, and it was a good win.
Yeah, a much needed victory after that disappointing result in Ames. I thought
Mhm.
Kansas came ready to play.
Yeah, definitely
14-0,
so.
14-0 run out of the get-go. Drum
hmm
Tang had to call two timeouts within 5 minutes.
hmm
Just my guess. I was at the game. And it was just one of those games where the entire time Kansas always had a very comfortable anywhere from 6 to 14, 15 point lead. And so
Yeah,
you're sitting there even when Kansas State would knock down shots, which they actually did a pretty good job staying in the game. My prediction for the game was Kansas State. This game would be close for a little bit, and then Kansas State would just be Kansas State. The Kansas State we've
right.
seen all season, and then Kansas would kind of get a 20-point easy victory, and that wasn't the case.
It wasn't.
Kansas State really was in this game for a majority of it, but it never felt like Kansas was ever in a position to lose.
That's a great way to put it. I mean, I definitely thought there were at times where it's like if they were like one or two shots away, Kansas State was from really making it a game. I mean, I think they shot, I want to say they shot around 23% from three. And I mean, they shot a lot from the outside. So they weren't really connecting on those looks.
Yeah,
But
they did shoot 23%. You hit it right on the head.
yeah,
Oh, the
it's just
Kansas
like,
defense was really good.
it was, yeah, and a lot of that, it wasn't just they were just missing looks. It was like we were, like, Kansas was definitely defending them very well.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's no, it was interesting for sure.
It was one of those games where you're watching it and Zeke Mayo, man.
Yeah,
Zeke Mayo is just a big time player.
he
And
is,
that's
man.
that's the best way to put it because
Yeah,
this was a guard who transfers in from a mid-major, a guard who's from Lawrence who knows Kansas basketball.
hmm
But whenever you have those up transfers, you wonder if they will if their game will translate to a high level, if they're going to feel comfortable in a new system. There's a bunch of different questions, and we haven't had to see any of those questions with Zeke Mayo.
yeah,
We haven't had to like talk about it at all. It's a
yeah,
seamless transfer. He is one hell of a basketball player.
man, he is.
Some NBA team is going to get very lucky when they pick up Zeke Mayo. He is a bucket getter, a hard player. He's good. He's really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great way to put it. He's just really good. I mean, his whether it's his playmaking or shot making ability. There's been games I remember when we were there for the Michigan State game in Atlanta, and he didn't really shoot the ball that well, but I think he had like 7 rebounds or 7 assists. I can't remember the exact figure, but he just makes his presence felt in some regard every game.
Every
Uh,
game.
every game, and like he's the guy. It's like if Kansas wants to win a national championship or even make it far into the tournament, you need guys like Zeke Mayo who, he can score 25 a night and you're not going to be surprised. But it's the games where he shoots 2 for 12 and can't really get anything going offensively, but he's still, whether it's defensively or making a play for another guy, like those are the games that he has to where it's like, okay, you take him and you put him on a big stage and he's going to make an impact no matter what. And
He's a
so
big time player.
he is, man. He is
And,
100%.
and that's just the best way to put it. Because before the season, I'll admit I was one of them. I didn't think Zeke Mayo would have to be the star of the show.
Me neither.
I
Yeah.
thought we'd have AJ Storr, we'd have Hunter Dickinson,
Hmm.
we'd have KJ and Dewan and Rylan Griffin, and
Hmm.
that would be the five we roll with. And Zeke's coming off the bench and
Yeah.
contributing here and there. No, Zeke's the dude.
He is. Yeah. I mean,
Zeke is the dude.
I thought at first it was like when I was looking at the roster before the season, or even like way before the season, I was thinking, he's a really good player. Maybe put him in the starting lineup in certain situations, but he would be like a really good six man or
Yeah.
a really, really good role player. But no, yeah, like you said, man, he's the star of the show, and he's earned every amount of praise that he's been given.
Yeah, when Bill Self said that he was the best player during the summer, I was a little skeptical of how good this Kansas team was really going to be if Zeke Mayo was.
Right? Yeah,
And no, Zeke Mayo is the real deal.
he is
He is
absolutely.
a big time player. He finishes the game with 24 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, doing a little bit of everything, shooting a very, very high percentage 7 of 13 from the field, 4 of 7 from deep. So it was one of those games where Zeke Mayo, I mean, himself, at one point he had 11 points and K State had 10.
Yeah,
Like it was one
yeah.
of those, like he could do no wrong to start the game.
Hmm.
Hunter Dickinson, after I wouldn't say bad performance against Iowa State, but just like a not a typical Hunter Dickinson type performance, he
Yeah,
bounced back against Kansas State. And I don't
definitely.
know if it was because of his beef with Coleman or his little drama with Coleman Hawkins, those
Yeah.
ex Big Ten players right there, but he
Hmm.
played really well. He had 25 points himself. He's a walking double double.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I guess he did not get a double double this game. 8 boards instead of 10. Wow.
Hmm.
That's funny because that's the thing we're pointing out is like, ooh, that's not typical Hunter Dickinson.
Right.
He had 25
He
and
had, he had 25 points. Yeah.
yeah. It's an insane game for him. He still missed some bunnies.
Hmm.
The good thing is he made a lot more of those bunnies yesterday than he did against Iowa State, which was
Yeah.
much, much needed. Other than those two, Shaq Moore, he played a pretty solid game defensively. I
Hmm.
thought AJ Storr really started to feel more comfortable, which is
Hmm.
a whole different topic. I know every time I bring on a new little analyst, journalist to talk about KU hoops, we have to talk about the whole AJ Storr stuff. We'll,
Yeah.
we'll touch on it. Thought AJ Storr played better.
Hmm.
And Juan Harris really shot the ball well.
He did.
Other than that, I feel like Kansas defensively, you always know what you're gonna get. Defense travels. Coach Self said that before. Hunter Dickinson said that before. The guys really buy in defensively and on that side of the ball. Offensively, I felt like everything just flowed better.
Yes. Very much so. Very much so. And like your half court sets. We were Kansas playing well in the open court as well. Just overall a more smooth offensive performance, especially when you compare it to what we saw with them in Ames.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is a Kansas team that we know won't be a heavy 3-point shooting team. We know
Mm.
they haven't been the past 2 years while I've been here. And even though this team seems like they have more shooters on the team, a common theme has been they've continued to struggle shooting the ball from outside. This team shot 6 of 16 from the perimeter, which is around 38%, if I'm right.
Yep,
I hope I'm right.
you are.
I hope I'm right.
I was impressed. That's impressive math, brother.
But it's just one of those things where they shot it good enough to win the game, which is all
Hmm.
you're asking them to do.
Hmm.
Anywhere between 35, 40%, you're going to have a good shot because this team is so good defensively.
Very much so, yeah. And I'm looking at the overall stats. I mean, they shot 55% from the field. I mean, they were getting a lot of easy looks too. That's a credit to their execution. But you're right. I mean, they don't. I don't expect this Kansas team to ever have to necessarily have to rely on the three. They have guys that can shoot it, but if you can just get it to if you can shoot just enough, just well enough, and you know that your defense is a constant, then I mean that'll be recipe for success even in a tough conference like the Big 12.
I feel like this was exactly the kind of game Kansas needed to have after a disappointing game in Ames.
Yeah.
Because that Iowa State game, I had Charlie Krupski on here and we were talking about that.
Hmm.
The game was not, it's not really like you're upset about the result because I don't think
Yes.
many Kansas fans necessarily expected to walk into Ames and get the win.
No. Yeah.
But you were a little upset, or not even upset. You were just, it was a little tough knowing that there were opportunities to win that game because Iowa State didn't play at their best.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I feel like Kansas came out and especially to start the game, dominated.
Yes. That start was pleasing for any Jayhawk fan because I mean you tune into the game and I think like everybody thought Kansas was going to win, and I mean at least would have been really shocked if it would have been the other way. But that 14-0 start just made it seem like there was never any doubt, and that's all you want as a Jayhawk fan, or if you're a player on that team, you just need that comfort. So
Yeah,
yeah,
you
that
have
heck of an open start.
yeah, the comfort and the confidence. You walk out
Yeah.
there and you punch somebody in the mouth, you're feeling pretty good about the rest of the game.
Hmm.
AJ Storr hasn't had the greatest Kansas tenure so far. And that's
Hmm.
the truth. He'd admit it himself if he was on this podcast. But
Absolutely.
what he has done is he's been there, and I feel like what me and Charlie talked about was he was just trying to do too much. When he would get in, he would just try to do too much. He'd make a play, and then
Yes.
everything would kind of spiral. He'd try to make a play defensively.
Hmm.
One extra little push, a little foul. He's got to come out of the game. Maybe being
Hmm.
too aggressive, just trying to find his rhythm.
Yep.
He played better yesterday. He knocked down a few shots. I felt like he played in the rhythm of
Hmm.
the offense, which is nice to see. And I'm kind of excited to see an AJ Store with a little more of an opportunity.
Me too. I think it's hard for a player who comes from a Big Ten school, plays very well, and sort of treated as like the man in that program. And then you come into a situation like Kansas where it's not just you, it's Zeke Mayo, it's Shaq Moore, it's a bunch of different guys coming in at the same time you are, and everybody has to figure out their role. And I think for some people that's an easier transition. Like I think Zeke's found that transition to be very smooth. But for a guy like AJ Storr, it hasn't been. I still think he's a heck of a talent, and I think as the season progresses, that there's going to be moments where, even like in that Iowa State game, he was on the court for some pivotal moments of that game. If they were going to try to make a comeback, he was on the floor for that. And there was one play where he got the ball, and I don't mean to just harp on the Iowa State game, but he got the ball and he just shot from like 30 feet. And I just remember being like, well, that's just not what you need in that moment. And so, like you said, doing a little too much at times. But I think if you give him the right opportunity and allow him to shine in those pivotal moments, I think he can pull through.
Yeah. He's a ball dominant player.
Yes.
I feel like that's the kindest way to say it.
Hmm.
He needs the ball to make an impact. And not every player is like that. Shaq
Yeah.
Moore's defensive impact is impressive because he's not going to fill up the stat sheet a whole bunch. I feel like KJ Adams does so much without the ball. DeJuan
Yes.
Harris does so much without the ball. But there are certain guys who need the ball to make an impact.
Hmm.
Hunter Dickinson's one of them too.
Yeah.
And that's just the player kind of AJ Storr is.
Yeah.
And so when AJ Storr needs the ball to make an impact and he can't find the floor,
Hmm.
it's going to be really hard for him when he does get subbed in to make an impact right away or in a 3 minute time span.
Yeah.
That's why, well, he needs to take advantage of these minutes while he has them because we don't really know what's going on with KJ Adams. And that will transition us
Hmm.
to our next topic. Kansas looked decent without KJ Adams, which I'm going to be honest, I did not expect. I
Yeah.
expected Kansas offensively to maybe even increase their efficiency increase,
Hmm.
but defensively, I thought there would be a few times where Kansas would struggle. And for the most part, they looked pretty good.
Yeah.
There were a few times where Kansas would make the wrong play or Kansas State would make the right play, right?
Hmm.
But overall, I felt like there wasn't a huge drop off. And I don't know if that was because of the competition yesterday or if that was because of Kansas's just execution defensively.
I think it can be a little bit of both. I think it could be a little bit of both. I think we'll see how Kansas looks, especially on the road. If KJ is still going to be absent, I think that's when you can maybe feel his absence a little more
Yeah.
If you're Kansas. Um, but I thought yesterday they took care of business knowing that he wouldn't be there, and KJ provides so much that doesn't show up in the stat sheet necessarily.
No.
Those energizing plays and just the presence that he brings. I mean, he's just such a broad, human being. Like he provides so much that doesn't get recorded on the stat sheet. And I think if you're Kansas, you have to try to combat him not being there. And I think they did a good job of that yesterday.
Yeah. Overall, I thought Kansas looked pretty good. Got off to a hot start, and that just continued throughout the game. 84-74 win at home against Kansas State. You have any final thoughts about the K-State game?
I don't think anything that we haven't talked about now. Just a solid win for Kansas. Any win against a rival's a big one. So, and it'll be interesting to see what it looks like going forward for them.
Yeah.